All right, Frank, in a few seconds, it's your show.
All right.
Well, we don't have.
Does anyone?
Sorry, we don't have Aaron up yet.
All right, Frank, in a few seconds, it's your show.
All right.
Do we have green on?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to my living room. I'm Frank Doden, and I'll be chairing tonight's September 15th, 2020 meeting of the Yellow Springs Planning Commission. Could the clerk call the roll, please, Judy?
Yes, Doden.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Curlis. Curlis, are you there? Pilata. I see you, but I can't.
There it is. He was muted.
Green.
Here.
Okay, also present, we have Brianne Parcels, Village Solicitor, Denise Swing, Planning and Zoning Administrator, and Jose Salmeron will be hosting the meeting this
And
evening.
Johnny Burns is on there too.
Oh, and we, Public Works Director Johnny Burns.
Well, again, welcome everybody. For the most part, one of the things I've noticed both in teaching via Zoom, but on also having a number of planning commissions via Zoom is if for the most part, you can keep your microphones muted, that tends to control the sound and video quality better for everybody. If the system, it seems like if the system gets too many audio inputs going through it, it kind of, it can disrupt the audio for everybody. So try to keep your microphone muted as much as possible. I'm just going to quickly review tonight's agenda. The first thing we'll do is review the minutes of the August 11th, 2020 meeting. And then we'll talk about communications that we've received for this meeting. There'll be a council report. Is Laura, Laura, are you going to have a council report tonight?
A short one.
Okay. And then we'll have a time for citizens' comments for items that are not on the agenda. And then we'll have one public hearing to amend a subdivision regulation regarding parkland dedication. And then 3 items of old business, a presentation about the comprehensive land use plan, discussion, informational discussion about the annexation process, and Johnny Burns will be giving us the stormwater study results. And then after that, it's new business, agending, and then eventually adjournment. So any changes to the agenda that? No, okay. Well, let's go to the review of the minutes from August 11th, 2020, and we'll just take it page by page. Do any of the members of Planning Commission have any changes or corrections to page 1? Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Or page 8. Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move that we approve the minutes from Tuesday, August 11th, 2020.
Second.
Okay. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Williams.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Pilata.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, for the communications, Judy, I'm going to ask for your help on this for any communications that have come in that need to be reported, because there weren't any in the packet, but
We've got one from Mary Eby with commentary about the Angle Park that was received very, very last minute, about 15 minutes ago. I forwarded that on to you, Frank, and to Denise. Basically, they're just asking for more consideration for folks in that residential area and not just consideration for tourists on that. In that matter, there's a similar comment from Parker Buckley, who's planning also to get on the meeting. A comment from, I'm sorry, no comment from Michael Slaughter. He's simply on the meeting. And you've got just now a comment from Terry Smith.
It's for the same item. This is
Okay.
Michael. Same item.
Okay,
Parking.
so those are the communications that I've got.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Laura, for the council report. Oh, you're muted, Laura.
Just trying to follow your instructions, Frank. We were presented with an annexation agreement for our consideration concerning over 30 acres on the south side of town, north of Hyde and west of Spillane. And council tabled that annexation proposal until the township had a chance to review it and make any changes they might have. And we have received some communications, the council has in any event, from neighbors about the annexation, just so that Planning Commission's aware and they might read those when the council packet comes out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. All right, now we'll go on to citizen comments. And this is an opportunity for, if anybody wants to make any comments about any of the items that are not currently, or anything that's not currently on the agenda. So if you'd like to make a comment and you're in the Zoom meeting, if you go to your little menu bar, which should be either at the top of your screen or bottom of the screen, you should be able to hit a button that says raise your hand. And then Josue, the host, will be able to identify you. I'll give you 30 seconds or so to get it all sorted out if anybody wants to make any citizen comments.
Frank, I see no hands being raised.
Okay. Oh, was that Michael Slaughter, was he raising his hand?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see the hand being raised on the icon, but I do see Carol Young and Mr. Michael Slaughter wanting to be recognized.
Okay, why don't we go with Michael first?
So can you see me, hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't get a comment in earlier. I just logged in, but I am currently, and my family is currently a resident on Elm Street. And a number of the residents I've spoken to up Elm Street and around Phillip Street, Parker and Carol Young being the others up there, are concerned about the angled parking and the additional stress in front of our home with people visiting the village parking. We have a problem with that being so close to downtown. People come and leave cars. They leave them all night. They leave things on the lawn. I am also concerned about losing two lanes on Elm Street. I don't know how you're going to put angled parking and allow parallel parking on our side of the street. Is the street going to become one way? You know, there's just a lot of unanswered questions for me on this additional parking plan. I'll just leave it at that. I know others want to talk.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Okay. And the Young, Carol, did you want to say something?
I guess I get to speak. But
No, okay.
I'm Parker. I'm Carol's husband.
Hi, Parker.
I guess our concern is as I expressed in the email, we look across Phillip Street and we seldom ever see the existing parking used to capacity. Sunday mornings on like Easter, yes, it'll be full. And obviously during street fair, But otherwise, I mean, there's lots of space out there all the time, you know? So I wonder what problem we're trying to solve by adding diagonal parking and perhaps, again, as Michael said, making this one way, because it's not going to be that wide. I think to have two-way traffic and diagonal parking. So that's our concern, is just to ask for a little consideration for the neighbors and the people in this residential neighborhood. But thank you for a chance to comment.
Okay.
I'll comment.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
I guess I'll comment too, and just
Okay.
say, there doesn't, from our perspective living here, there doesn't seem to be a problem. There's always plenty of parking. So what is it you're trying to fix? So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else? See anybody else? Oh, sorry.
Not on Zoom, Frank. There are folks weighing in on social
Okay.
media, but we haven't adopted any policy here to incorporate any of those comments.
Right. All right. I think that'll be all for that section of citizens' comments. There will be additional time for some citizen input when we get down to I believe the section on the comprehensive land use plan later on under old business as well, specific to that. So let's go to our first public hearing then, which is the amend chapter 1226.07 of the subdivision regulations for parkland dedication. Denise, you want to talk a little bit about the staff report, please?
Yes, and Hostway is going to put up the exhibit A1 for the parkland. The parkland dedication, which is section 1226.07 of the subdivision regulations chapter, is really the final section of the subdivision regulations that Planning Commission needs to finish reviewing. We've been working on this for over a year now and updating those. One of the concerns with the parkland dedication as it was written was that it was only related to land that was subdivisions that were over 50 acres. And as obviously we've discussed on many occasions, that we don't even have any areas of over 50 acres. So one of the things that we see at staff level, and we've discussed a little bit at Planning Commission, is the fact that there is not really a lot of active recreational use types of parks. We do have a lot of open areas. We've got the Glen Helen. We've got a passive recreation through Ellis Park and Duncan Park. But as far as active public use, we have what is at the Bryan Center, and we have Gaunt Park. So this, in looking at the parkland dedication, and in talking with Aaron Sorrell, our planning consultant, we discussed, rather than basing it completely on number of people and number of lots, that we look at the number of units as the deciding factor. Greene County, I have that in there really just for Planning Commission's reference. We don't really need to put it up here. Under their under Exhibit B, they get very technical in determining what each unit contains. They base it on whether it's single family, apartments, number of bedrooms, and they use a lot of different variables to come up with number of persons. In discussing this, we decided that we would just look at each unit, 3 people. And that kind of covers it, whether it's an apartment or a big house. We just try to find something in between. So, for example, the way this would work, and also it would depend on what you want for the number of acres. Right now, the number of acres that we require per 1,000 persons is 3. But that was from an old park and rec plan from the late 1990s. Not as old actually as this subdivision regulations that we're updating, but nonetheless, Greene County, their subdivision regulations actually require 5 acres of land per 1,000. So the way we would end up calculating this would be, we would, in simplifying it, and depending on the number of acres that we want, we would take the number of units times 3 people times the number of acres per 1,000. And that is how we would come up with what we would request a developer dedicate for parkland. Now, if that amount is higher than what Public Works and Planning Commission feel is necessary, we could also then have a part land, part fee in lieu. And the fee in lieu would be calculated based on what the fair market value of that land is at that time. So that's pretty much what we came up with. There's not a lot of acreages of land left. There's a few more areas left within the village, and that then we thought it would just be easier to try to keep this as simple as possible. One other thing I wanted to mention too was that the way a developer could get around and just go with fee in lieu is if they were like within a half-mile walking distance. And that would be by way of existing public rights of way. I mean, not just how the crow flies, but, and that, you know, when you look at the south part of town, there just isn't anything over there. So that would be one where we definitely would want parkland dedicated. The other thing, what wasn't recommended by Aaron, our consultant, but I did wonder, and so I went ahead and did put it in there, about the possibility of, for those for under 5 units, where we're getting into these minor subdivisions, if there could be possibly, if we can legally do this, is in lieu of that is would establish a park and rec fee that would go to, which would help offset and help in the purchase of equipment and maintaining these recreational areas. That's something to think about. You know, we are getting some minor subdivisions around town. It does add to the population base slowly but surely, and that will eventually put a little stress onto our park system. It might just be something, and it could be something like a $300 fee per unit, just something that we could add on to that. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Denise. All right, so sounds like in addition to just considering the proposed amendment in general, we might want to think about the 5 acres versus 3 acres. That our language said 3 acres, but Greene County requires 5 acres. So do we want to stick with 3 or get it in line with Greene County? Any members of the Planning Commission have any thoughts about this proposed amendment? Yeah, Laura. Oh, you're muted again.
I called Denise earlier because I wanted to know how this actually worked in reality. And Denise, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you had like 100 units that were being developed, if we use Greene County's formula, it would require 1.5 acres of parkland. Is that right? If we use the 5, it's kind of weird how it works, but instead of 3, we did 5 acres. Instead of a formula, you multiply by 0.005. So you would get 1.5 acres for 100 units, which times 3 is 300 people. I'm kind of favoring going with the Greene County standard And remember, this is not I mean, it could have some green space, but it's meant to be active recreation.
Yeah.
So we have neighborhood playgrounds and that sort of thing. So I'd like to hear what other people have to say, but I'm kind of considering a motion to amend the 3 to a 5.
I think I would probably agree with you as well about moving from 3 to 5. Other members of the Planning Commission, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, it sounds reasonable that, you know, if you're planning something that you could plan in a bigger space. It sounds like in some of these cases, the amount of land, the park area is going to be very small. So we might, I mean, the 5 seems like it could make it a more usable park.
Yes, and this, and you know, what we don't want to see happen is that what becomes a really a detention basin is then somehow counted, you know, as parkland. We wanted something that was actually something that could be used.
Right.
So
Right.
we went ahead. I also took from Greene County about the shape of it, the topography of it, because, you know, typically, you know, your developers are probably going to want to go with that land that isn't sort of scrap land for them anyway, but we want something that's usable.
Yeah.
Yes. So I would make a motion that we strike 3 and substitute 5.
Johnny wants to say something.
Oh,
Just something to keep in the back of your mind, when we increase it just to have more space, that's more space that Public Works has to maintain. So if we keep it at the 3, or I'm just throwing this out there, if it's a usable space and it's serving as a park, why increase it more just for Public Works and the village have to maintain it if it can be done at 3 versus 5? Just throwing it out there.
I think in answer to Johnny's question, I mean, it's a valid question. I think what I would like to see happen is if we keep it at the higher, which Greene County does, is that we can have, we may in the end, and it is written in there that we talk to, I think, Public Works or somebody, I think I had it in that language, but that, you know, if they evaluate, staff weighs in and says, hey, we really don't need 1.5 acres for this, you know, 1 acre is enough, then we could turn around and say, or maybe 3/4 of an acre is enough for this area. Then we could then require the rest to be fee in lieu. And at least that amount, that the rest of that acreage would then be turned into a monetary donation that could help to provide equipment. So
could it also be natural habitat if we felt we didn't need it all for recreation? Like, you know, there are native plantings like native prairie you can plant and you only have to bush hog it once a year. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not up on that stuff.
Right.
So Laura, you were going to.
Yeah, I was in the middle of a motion. So to make there, I think the word 3 appears in a couple of places to strike and make it 5. And then that formula would be 0.005.
I do think, and I need to ask Judy, but I believe this was talked about last month and it was tabled. Does there need to be a motion to remove it from the table?
Remove which from the table?
This section, I think I thought we just tabled this because we were going to come back around. And talk
You
about
need
it.
to untable it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm just asking.
I was saying,
So
let's do it. Yeah, that's a good, thank you, good call. So if someone can move to untable the discussion on chapter 12, 26.007, Then we move forward with Laura's motion. I'm sorry, I should have caught that.
All right. I'll move.
All right, thank you. I'll move to untable the discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll on that, please?
Yes, Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. Green.
Yes.
Pallotta.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Okay, so now we can go back to,
Josue, can you go back to the actual exhibit A1, make sure that I don't know if we need to like agree first on everything that's in it, or if there's other things that you want to take. Like maybe we need to scroll through and see what we're going to accept here before we then make that motion. I think everybody was okay the last time about having that cutoff being 5 units or more. Is everybody okay about paying a fee in lieu if
5, yes.
in lieu of dedication?
Hey, Denise, can I say one thing about the fee?
Uh-huh.
So one thing to keep in mind when you are crafting the operating procedures for if you move forward with the fee in lieu, is this is essentially an impact fee. And so part of that is that fee that's paid has to be directly related to what the impact on the village is. So a developer that pays a fee in one particular part of town, though that investment needs to stay relatively close to where that fee is being paid. So you can't really move it from one side of the village to the other. Just your legal counsel will figure all that out, but I'm just throwing that out there to be mindful that it's not a big pot of funds that can be used for anything and everything recreation.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
So I think it comes down to that last line: residential subdivisions of less than 5 units may pay a park and recreation fee established by council in lieu of dedication. But if we would keep that, then depending on where that minor subdivision is, that would have to go to a nearby park for its maintenance. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's correct.
And all of that can be worked out in your procedures on how you do it. I'm just raising that issue up.
All right. So I'll renew my motion.
Right.
Changing 3 to 5 where it appears twice, and the formula to 0.005.
Okay, I'll second that. Okay. Would the clerk call the roll on that motion to amend?
Yes.
Can hear you.
Pallotta.
Yes.
Thank you. Curlis.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, can we, since we've amended this, does it have to come back to us again, or can we direct this to council now?
I mean, if everyone was okay with the rest of the language, then would that be something, Judy, that needs to be voted on as a whole now that the amendment's been made?
To recommend to forward it to council?
Correct, yes.
You
Okay.
would make a motion to forward with as amended to council.
Doesn't it just do that automatically?
What, go with the motion or forward to council?
No, that just goes to council next, or it doesn't become effective. It's not going to be adopted.
Well, planning commission has to give their stamp of approval, and the stamp of approval takes the form of recommending that it go to council.
Well, I thought we just gave our stamp of approval, but I'll move that we send it to council.
Well, actually, we technically need to open a public hearing on this, don't we? Yeah. Okay. So unless, are there any other comments about the text or the text as amendment? If not, I'm going to open a public hearing. If anybody has anybody in the public has any comments about this text amendment to section 1226.07 of the zoning code. Again, Josue, if you could keep an eye on seeing if anybody raises their hands or yodels or does anything out there to draw attention, we'll give them a few seconds to respond. Seeing anything?
Anyone waving their hands?
Okay. All right, but then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to Planning Commission. And so now we can vote whether to recommend this to council.
As amended, yeah.
Yeah, as amended. Which I'll move that we forward to, or that we recommend to council the changes to section 1226.07 parkland dedication as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And could you call the roll on that, please?
Yes. Williams.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Williams. Oh, did I call you twice? Williams.
Yes.
Yes.
Vote early, vote often.
Okay. All right, I got Doden. Curlis, did I call you and did you yes or no?
You did not call me, but I vote yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. That gets us through our public hearing. Thank you, everybody. We are now moving on to our first of three items of old business. We're going to have a comprehensive land use plan presentation by Aaron Sorrell of Community Planning Insights.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Okay, I'm trying to see where you are here. Ah, there you are. I had to flick through my screen to find you.
Josue, can you make me a host so I can share my screen?
You're all set, Aaron.
Oh, okay, fantastic. There we go. All right. So I am just going to run through a relatively brief presentation that hits the highlights of the draft comprehensive land use plan, goes through fairly quickly most of the chapters. I will go into more detail on those chapters where we've received public comment, both through the website and then also what was transmitted through your packet, and then on to next steps. So hopefully you see basically a PowerPoint presentation, if you can nod your head. Okay, great. So we have, this is the steering committee for the comprehensive land use plan, made up of members of Planning Commission, council, interested stakeholders, residents. The process began nearly a year ago. September 25th, we held our kickoff meeting. We had approximately 80 attendees. There were 4 online surveys that took place between September of 2019 through March. 2 were your traditional SurveyMonkey type surveys. 1 was a map-based survey through Esri. In November of 19, we had 7 focus group interviews and a couple one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders and developers. We had 43 participants through that. We launched the original project website in late September. It went through July of 2020. Over that life, there were 904 visits, 650 unique individuals went to sustainableyellowsprings.com. In January, based on all of the feedback that we had received through then, we had an open house at Mills Lawn where we had approximately 150 attendees. that provided a lot of feedback on our draft land use maps, our priorities, et cetera. 21 comments were then posted to the project website. A few weeks later, COVID hit and really sort of put the brakes on this process, along with a lot of other processes. In the meantime, we had been drafting the comprehensive land use plan, refining the maps based on public comment. In July of this year, we released the draft plan. We switched over to a different, same URL, but a different website that is the draft comprehensive land use plan. We had a socially distanced outdoor open house on August 4th in front of the train depot. We had about 40 attendees who legitimately participated. We had a lot more people walk by, but actual people who were reading the boards and asking questions were about 40 individuals. The highlights of the comprehensive land use plan were published in the Yellow Springs News on August 6th. Between the July rollout of the draft and today, the draft land use plan website has had 541 visitors, 470 unique individuals, and 110 comments were submitted on the draft through the portal. Also, over the course of this, we've had 5 steering committee meetings over the project. And at the last meeting, you received all of those comments that I had copied and pasted from the website for your review. Whoops. So just for those tuning in who haven't been part of this process, and I apologize for my dog, the characteristics of the comprehensive land use plan are, one, they're comprehensive. It's the entire jurisdiction as opposed to just a small area plan. They're very general. They're high-level policies, goals, objectives, as opposed to the zoning ordinance, which really gets into the regulation of individual parcels. And they're long range. We look out 5, 10, 20 years, whatever is the appropriate time span for the community. In this case, this is probably a 10 to 20 year look. There's really a handful of purposes for a land use plan. One, to identify the needs of the community, identify those goals and policies that directly address those needs. 3, and this is important, directs the operation and investments in the long-term development of land uses, parks, streets, et cetera. A lot of your funding requirements, or for example, through MVRPC or other funding situations, want to see that those investments, like your bond counselor, will want to see that the investments in the public infrastructure that you're going to make are part of a plan. And then does serve as the basis for the framework for your zoning and subdivision regulations, which we just had a conversation about. So based on the, and I won't read these to everybody, but based on the public engagement process, these are really the 8 planning priorities that had emerged, and part of them were also identified in your Vision 2010 process as well. But this is about protection of agricultural and rural areas, provide additional living options, improve economic diversity, et cetera. So there are 9 chapters within the land use plan, and we're calling Sustainable Yellow Springs, and that's both economic, environmental, and human sustainability. The 9 chapters are listed here. You can also see them on sustainableyellowsprings.com. I will be flipping back and forth between this presentation and the website in a minute. So as part of the drafting of the future land use map, we took into account, again, these land use principles, so that the village will develop in an economic and ecologically sustainable manner. So this is about thoughtful development. Infill and redevelopment will be encouraged over greenfields. This is a key number 3, all development activity will occur within the urban service area boundary. We want to see connectivity of places, parks and open space should be integrated. Future land use should reflect the values of the community. And when we talk about this, we're talking about the sustainability values, both economic, ecological, and human. Diverse housing options being promoted, and then economic development activities that actually contribute to the village. And then lastly, protecting cultural and historical significant areas. So there are a number of land use categories that we have developed. I tried to choose language that was complementary but not this identical as the zoning resolution, your zoning ordinance, so that they weren't confused. But there are low, medium, and high density residential categories, your downtown commercial, and your general commercial, and everybody can read what these are about. The key distinction between the downtown and the general commercial is the downtown commercial is wanting to foster walkability, compact development. It is activity on the street. Your downtown area is your economic engine of the village, and that should be strengthened and encouraged. The general commercial area are those areas that those land uses aren't well accommodated downtown, mainly those auto-oriented type of uses. So those are more on the outskirts of the periphery on your main corridors like 68 or Dayton Yellow Springs. But the idea is to keep the downtown area walkable, trying to reduce those interactions between automobiles and pedestrians, and you want to keep not have, keep those auto-oriented uses outside of the general commercial, or outside of the downtown. The other thing about general commercial is it's really a non-retail district. We want to make sure that the downtown stays a critical mass for those symbiotic types of land uses, and that that the village over time doesn't sort of cannibalize itself by allowing the traditional downtown uses to just spread along the corridors to where you have a long corridor of nothing, and you lose that in that nexus and that creative area. The institutional mixed use right now is largely Antioch. The idea behind this land use district is it's a large area right now owned by one user, but this district can accommodate multiple uses, multiple buildings, multiple developments. It functions in a campus-like manner. It's also flexible enough that if Antioch decides that they want to divest themselves of certain land uses or certain properties, that it does accommodate redevelopment within that district. Public use is a new one you haven't had on your future land use map. Those are just those uses that are typically open to the public, such as schools, places of worship, government buildings. Your light industrial, there's two industrial districts, light and medium industrial. The distinction between the two is light industrial uses, those activities are wholly within a building. There almost no outdoor storage of materials or product. The medium industrial allows a little bit more flexibility for staging of product or equipment, but it does, it's in the long-term outdoor storage of materials should be discouraged or minimized. And then parks and open space, which is pretty, well, that's self-descriptive. What is new are the transitional future land use districts. There are two. There's a west transitional and a south transitional future land use district. Those districts are outside of the village boundary, but within the urban service boundary. The idea behind these are to provide future guidance if at such point in time in the future there is a desire for the agricultural uses to end and that land be developed and annexed into the village. So this is in a sense, guidance for plan board and council and future developers on what those acceptable uses could be if at some point in time the agricultural use subsides. So let me go to the future land use map. Let's see here. That's not the right one. That's the right one. I'm looking for the right one. Hold on a second. All right, do you see a map?
Yes.
Okay, so this is not the map that is on the website yet. This is on my GIS because the cartography is better than what's on the website. So this is the west transition area here. So the black dotted line is the village boundary. The red dotted line is the urban service boundary. So there are two large parcels here that are currently agricultural. On the west side, I think this could transition at some point into light industrial, or this area on the east of that.
Aaron,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So what does that specifically mean when you say the urban service boundary? Does that mean that there's like sewer and water and electricity in those locations, or?
So the urban service boundary, and that's one comment that we got, was that it's not defined in the plan, which I will define what it is. So the urban service boundary is the area that was determined through a sewer study many years ago, for which this area could be served by utility extensions, and still basically your sewer could still, they could be served by your gravity-fed sewer system. So you would not have the need for significant lift stations or pump stations to get your water out there as well. So this is basically your growth boundary in Yellow Springs. And all of the land use policies and future plans that I have read have really called for this to be the hard stop, this urban service boundary, the hard stop of future development. And when you look at areas that I just flipped here in green to where they're either under conservation easements, or there is a desire to be under conservation easements in the future, that's the area immediately outside of the urban service boundary. So when putting together the future land use plan, I purposefully did not propose any development outside of that area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. And when you say that these things are, that these could be serviced by a gravity-fed sewer system, but there isn't, in a lot of cases, there isn't sewer available there. Is there any like variation in what would be, easier or harder to service with the sewer system? Or you didn't look at that?
I didn't look at that. I did have conversations with Johnny about, where sewer access is, where water access would be. We looked at that more specifically, looking at the Glass Farm development. If we're talking about Dayton Yellow Springs Road, you do have water sewer along Dayton Yellow Springs. It goes up a little bit into Enon, but all of this would need, significant utility expansion to occur at some point in time. Same way down in the south, there would need to be utilities extended in this area as well. Presumably, that is done on the cost of the developer, but time will tell as to if like Yellow Springs did here, build out develop its own industrial park. If you wanted to do that in the future, that's really a village decision and a policy call on how you want to invest those funds in the future. But based on past studies, this red area is where utilities could be extended without a lot of heartburn. It will still cost money. The other reason that the areas out here are largely industrial versus residential is that this is the area outside of your wellhead capture area. So this green line here is your the limits to where based on the last study, your wellhead field is pulling water. So if there wasn't, inevitably a potential chemical spill or some potential groundwater pollution, it is less likely to get into your groundwater drinking water system up here than it is down south here, which is why largely, actually entirely, I'm proposing no industrial down here because you're much closer to your well field. In the south transition area, I think there's opportunity for additional residential. I think there's an opportunity for the expansion of Gaunt Park. It is adjacent here. This is a well-used park. I think this could be a great opportunity, again, at some future point in time, if this transitioned out of agriculture. This would make a lot of sense to expand Gaunt Park, line it with residential. I do think at some point in time there could be some office uses. That's one thing that land use that Yellow Springs is lacking in, especially downtown. You don't have a lot of office space available, and this makes a little bit more sense than, let's say, industrial because of the proximity to your wells, which are further south. The one question I had for Planning Commission is whether or not you want this on your future land use plan map. I went ahead and digitized the National Register Historic District. That's what this blue hash is. You do not have a local historic overlay. This is really just I'll call it a vanity district. It provides no protection for any of the historic structures. What it does offer is if there were a developer or a building owner who wanted to seek tax credits, historic reuse tax credits, it's eligible within this area. So it's more just as an indication that this exists. It's existed since the 80s, late 80s, but it hasn't been on any of the your land use maps. So I drew it out, and you can decide if you think it makes sense to include or not. Are there questions about the transition districts, either the east, the west or the south?
So I'm still a little bit concerned about this whole the sewer thing. So I live like right by the glass farm, and my house has been the lot that my house is on was built up probably about 6 feet maybe above where the original grade was. I have a manhole cover in my backyard, and I am the lowest point that they could get into the sewer. And then then the whole, like the place where the easement is on the glass farm, that's all stuff that's lower. And I'm just really concerned about, I have a feeling that there's a lot of that area on the glass farm that's lower. And I don't know what the mechanics are or how feasible it is. I'm not against development at all. I just, I have a feeling that the process that, where you give people a map and you have them look and say, well, where would you like to see houses, doesn't really capture whether some places are harder to put new development or easier to put new development. And so when you make it all look like everything is possible, I just, I don't know whether you get really a very nuanced result.
So I think that you're right. We did not look at the engineering feasibility from a utility standpoint. We were looking really at land uses. At some point, if there were a developer that really wanted to take a hard look at this area, that would be the first thing that they looked at to see how and if and how much it would really cost. And if it made sense in the marketplace, they'd probably move forward. If they didn't, then they'd either have a conversation with the village about, potential shared cost if it made sense, or they'll move on to an easier to develop site.
Okay, and also is this tied into like a plan for how much the village wants to grow, or if it wants to grow at all? I mean, some of the things that you've got, like when I look at the the development map for the Glass Farm, or like the thing for the number of houses you've got, like you're suggesting that Yellow Springs could have 500 more houses in it, and or demand for 500 houses, so that's 1,500 people. That would be a substantial increase in the number of people. And I'm not against more people in town. I actually think maybe we do need more people, but I'm just wondering, whether this is a plan for a certain amount of growth or a certain rate of growth, and how this fits into the whole idea about like sustainable from a tax revenue standpoint.
Right. So when I penciled out the based on what I thought, let's say best case scenario depending on your perspective, best or worst case scenario, that everybody now wants to move here, and this was built out overnight. You still roughly stay under the about the 5,000 person population. When you take away the amount of acreage for parks, public right of way, things of that nature, the usable yield is significantly less. The reality is that Yellow Springs has been losing population since the 70s. And even looking at the best case projections, I think you might grow 0.5% to 1% a year. So I think you've got a long way to get back to the 4,400 people at the peak. So again, yes, if you look at the build out scenario, you could get close to that, but we're talking 20 years, 25 years at best.
Okay. I mean, is there...
I was just going to say, and Aaron, you kind of cover the population trends in a section. I was just looking through the plan really quickly. Maybe you can direct us to the section where you talk about the population trends. Yes. But that might be helpful to the conversation. Well, sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, no. I mean, I saw the thing with the trends. I just was wondering whether this actually was also part of whether there was a goal, not just like reporting what was happening in the past, but also is there does the village want to intentionally, grow or maintain its size? I mean, I'm just wondering, how this relates to, any choices that have been made about growth, about like the size of the village.
So what we've heard through surveys and focus groups and the open houses is that the village wants to stay a village. They want to remain relatively small. There's a lot of room between where you are now and the ceiling of being a village. There was also a concern about high utility costs and high cost of living, and adding additional ratepayers to your utilities would at least spread out the base on the fixed cost side of that. So that, and lastly, there is a desire and I think a need to build the economic base, creating jobs, living wage jobs, and helping diversify the economy. I don't think that there is necessarily a end game that we want to be 4,500 people, 4,700 people. It's about the quality of life and thoughtful development, thoughtful incremental development as it occurs or as it comes to you. And laying out the future land use plan the way it is now provides some guidance to both developers, the Planning Commission, and the public about what the expected range of uses within a particular area would be palatable. It's not a guarantee that it would ever happen. It's just a future indication of what is acceptable or what could be here. There is still, as a proposal would come through, you still have the subdivision requirements and all of the other regulatory hurdles and from zoning to subdivision and et cetera, that would then help further fine tune the development to what it would actually become. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think that, you know, that maybe there should be stronger goals about maintaining the size and increasing the population. You know, I mean, I noticed from the thing that you don't have anything about the school system, you don't have anything about the college or the Glen or Friends Care, and these are all. I mean, I think about, like, I mean, and maybe those things never came up, but I think about these as all like really incredibly important parts of the village, and you know, things that need to be considered. You know, Yellow Springs, if you look at like the way it spends its money, it's a huge portion of it is going to the school system. And the reason why the property values can sustain, you know, are as high as they are in part because we have a good school system. If we don't have enough people and we have to get merged with Fairborn or some other kind of thing, then it totally changes, you know, the character of the village. So I'm just wondering whether these, you know, these are risks that aren't really addressed, and whether the village should actually try to, you know, promote a certain rate of growth to sustain itself.
So that deliberateness, that sort of growth goals were not necessarily something I ever heard from really anybody. It was more about making sure that when growth occurs, that it's managed appropriately. Now, when we did talk with, there was concern about the number of the lack or the declining enrollment within Yellow Springs schools. And so that is certainly an issue. We didn't dwell or really touch on the schools greatly because there's still the ongoing conversation about what will happen in the future with either a unified campus or a consolidated campus. And so those conversations were really taking a parallel track to this, this land use plan. And then again, as Antioch was working through its rebuilding process, what we did accommodate in this land use plan was to be as flexible as possible for whatever outcome Antioch is in the future.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Does that answer your questions or concerns, Stephen?
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the, you know, the opportunity to ask a bunch of questions.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. So you're back to seeing the PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me move this around. All right. Whoops, sorry. Yeah. So the second, one of the next chapter is transportation. I think it's important to talk about what the scope of this project also was. One of the charges that we had was to integrate the various studies and plans that have been done over the years into one unified document, or at least reference the various documents. So in the transportation section, we have tried to integrate the active transportation plan, the complete streets policy, and have updated the thoroughfare plan. The draft draft land use plan also sets basic design standards for the street sections. We simplified a little bit your street hierarchy. I thought it was sort of needlessly complex given the size of the village that you are. So the 3 key recommendations is adopt the updated thoroughfare plan, which I'll move to in a second. Evaluate the zoning code to encourage biking and walking through land use regulations. That was an outcome of the Complete Streets and Active Transportation Plan. And then this is really a check the box for future funding requests. Is that's to continue to seek outside funding for transportation improvements. Let me go to the thoroughfare plan real quick. There are minor changes to that, but I think it's important. Gotta move these windows around. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Okay. So one of the big, do you see the map?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The main change here is that in the last thoroughfare plan, Yellow Springs Fairfield Road was designated as an arterial. I don't think that makes any sense. And given that it is very unlikely that the bridge for the the bike path will ever be raised. So this really limits truck traffic. Secondly, I think that the residents on this road would be up in arms if this street was ever developed to the standards that an arterial would need to be. It would dramatically change the streetscape appearance, traffic flow of this area. A lot of those mature trees would need to be taken down. It doesn't make sense. So we've moved it back to a collector. It serves as a collector from these smaller residential streets. The other thing that we have done, and this is more of a future item, is designating for the future Enon and Hyde as collector roads. Again, if this were to ever be built out in the future through annexation development, that would put additional traffic on Eden and High, and it needs to be, one, set up for state funding to help improve and enlarge that, but also a recognition that these roads will eventually, again, many years down the road, if this were to ever transition out of agriculture, will receive significant traffic. In the transportation plan, we've also included the bikeway and pedestrian improvements that are outlined in the active transportation plan. They are all now unified under your thoroughfare plan. So it's both vehiculars, pedestrians, and bikeways under the thoroughfare plan. All right. Any questions about transportation? So Jose, I've got a question. There's a hand raised. Is there anything I should do?
Frank, are you welcoming input now?
Well, we're not having public comments yet. This is still, if it was a member of Planning Commission that had a hand raised, but if it's public, we're not having public comment yet. We're still finishing up Aaron's presentation.
Okay, well, I will go on through here. So housing in neighborhoods, housing is a key priority with the village. The comprehensive land use plan incorporates the 2018 housing needs finding, or the housing needs study findings. So those, both the recommendations and then also the demand forecast for housing largely comes out of that needs study as well as the council priorities. We also illustrated a potential development scenario in Glass Farm and some of the surrounding properties. We based that scenario on community feedback that emphasized a heightened sense of heightened density and design varieties. And then we're recommending a low-cost approach to really see if this site is viable to be developed in this market. And that's to basically go through a low-cost modified RFP to see if there are developers who would be interested in undertaking this. That's a recommendation that the village can move forward with or not, depending on how they see fit with that property.
And why the Glass Farm? Is that just, versus some of the other possible areas for development?
You own it, so you control it.
Okay.
There were three priorities that under economic development that emerged from this process. One was supporting existing businesses through improving the broadband. That was a big issue that came up. Continuing to invest in your public utility system, and then ensure that the village is responsive and friendly to business need or local business needs. Secondly was to support and strengthen downtown. One of the recommendations is to explore the creation of a DORA, a designated outdoor refreshment area. That's probably one of the most tangible recommendations in in light of COVID, to allow areas for more social distancing while you're enjoying the downtown area. So we'll talk about now parking, because I know this is a big issue. One of the recommendations is to review parking minimums to reduce barriers for business expansion. So I don't think one of the recommendations is to remove or eliminate or greatly reduce parking minimums for change of uses. It really doesn't make sense when you have an existing building to require any use to have any parking. One, or additional parking. One would be explore additional on-street parking. This was one of our tasks, was to look at additional on-street parking and more efficient off-street parking solutions. And I'll get back to this in a second. Third or fourth was our recommendation is to expand the downtown commercial zoning northward to Yellow Springs Fairfield Road. You have there is a industrially zoned area that's immediately adjacent to Yellow Springs Fairfield Road. I think in the future that makes more sense to be downtown commercial. You have the better design constraints, and then you can bring that a better linkage to downtown rather than industrial up there. And then identify areas for new building construction. So the fire station, I think the Mills Lawn school footprint, if there is a consolidation of a school campus, it's very unlikely that it would be on Mills Lawn. So that opens up the current school footprint for a downtown expansion, so to speak, either a new building or something that complements and really hardens that western edge of downtown. And then, of course, you've got the vacant lot on Railroad Street. So let me switch to the parking scenarios, because I know that there were questions about that. Let's roll one. There we go. Okay. Do you see the parking Okay. So we looked at, I'm just going to go through. Okay. So we looked at a couple options. One was existing off-street parking locations. So at some point in future time, when City Hall needs to be completely rebuilt, we think that by more efficiently striping the parking lot, being more linear than it is now, you add about 53 new spaces to this area with modest investment. Over here along Railroad Street, this corner lot would be reserved for development. The back lot would be a proposed parking lot. We could fit 34 spaces in here. So this has come up. So Elm, Walnut, Phillips.
Sorry.
If Mills Lawn School transitions to something else, there is an opportunity to do angled parking along Elm Street within the current right-of-way. This would not, based on the geometry that currently exists in the right-of-way that currently exists, it would still remain two ways. You would gain significantly more parking as angled parking than you do as parallel. This would be done in phases as Elm Street is rebuilt. Right now, a lot of people just parallel park on the gravel area. This would pull the gravel back to the sidewalk, curb, and then restriped as parallel parking. So as Elm is currently, its current state, I wouldn't recommend angled parking in the half gravel, half pavement. But if this were to be rebuilt over time, it does provide a significant opportunity to gradually increase to where it meets demand without impacting the travel lanes along Elm. There is significant right of way there for that to occur. These are just concept street sections. Same way along Phillips. I'm not sure there's a demand or a need for that right now, but if Mills Lawn were to not be Mills Lawn School, then there's that opportunity. The second lot is looking at Limestone. There's a vacant lot here that could be used for off-street parking further south. And then looking at parking options along Corey Street that would serve both those users of the bike trail and then those that are visiting downtown. These are just little pull-off designs that can accommodate 3 or so vehicles, and there are, I think, 12 that could be accommodated without significantly altering the Corey Street experience. And then lastly, looking at off-street parking at Betty Hughes, just immediately off Corey. We look to see if we could do a better parking lot orientation in the alley back here. I don't think you can park them any tighter than they currently are without significantly eating into Betty Hughes Park. So this was the alternative right off of Corey Street. So these were just design exercises to see what could happen. It would be up to the village if you wanted to move forward with them at some point in time, if demand determined that was important. But these were just renderings to show the possibility and then the amount of yield that we could get both on street and off street. Okay. Lastly, providing opportunities for new job creation. This is in those south and west transition areas, adopting a future land use that does provide some economic growth. And then developing outside of the comprehensive land use plan an economic development plan and strategy. Whoops, sorry. Parks, Recreation, and Culture, we don't have a lot of recommendations. One, you're moving forward, which was to amend the park land dedication requirements under your subdivision regulations. 2, update your park master plan. It's been since the early 90s that was updated. And then 3, this was another high priority of what we heard, which was build a dog park. I know one is being sketched out at Gaunt Park, but that is that's something that folks want to see. Lastly, for community character and urban design, continue to enforce those urban service boundary restrictions, continue to support the TLT in their conservation efforts outside of the urban service boundary. And then I think this has been looked at and hasn't gotten a lot of traction in the past, but really consider a local historic district overlay to protect key buildings from demolition without public conversation. There are a number of historic buildings in downtown and on Antioch's campus and throughout the village that, while they're in the National Register Historic District or they are individually listed, there's zero protection from demolition currently as they sit. Under public facilities and utilities, so utilities were a big discussion among business owners and residents, both cost, reliability, and environmental stewardship. This is an area that the village is already being very proactive about. So we're recommending, again, you continue your progress towards eliminating the sanitary sewer overflow events. Those events have gone down since the original study based on the investments that the village has been making. You've amended your stormwater regulations or are in the process of amending the stormwater regulations to require more on-site storage. And then, you know this better than me, improving your broadband telecommunications, both capacity and cost. So the next steps, one is to incorporate the feedback that we've received tonight into the comprehensive land use plan. I need to update some of the images and the illustrations that are in the land use plan. There are some designs that we did for Mills Lawn, and there's also some street sketches that were not included. They don't change any policy, but they're just different graphics for the plan. Lastly, or next would be then to prepare the official future land use map. While this land use plan is online, the limitations of the cartography of the online GIS system, I think, makes sense for the Planning Commission and Council to adopt as part of a resolution an official land use map, which would be better designed than what is currently there. So I'm almost done with that, but again, want to take into any consideration feedback that we received. And then lastly, present the final draft to council for adoption consideration.
So I got 2 questions. One is, what does, like, if the council adopts this, the land use plan, what does it actually obligate the council or the village to do? I mean, what does it mean when you adopt it? Is it just something so that you can show that you have a plan when you want grant money, or is it something that actually has some teeth and some enforcement?
So it's both. So one, it is there for to show that you are moving forward in your decision making in accordance to a comprehensive plan. So that is, soliciting transportation grant funds, public works grant funds, or other community development funds. Secondly, when you're making zoning map decisions, this set is the sort of the policy backbone behind your rezoning your rezoning map amendment decisions, and also for the future annexation opportunities.
Okay. And but if for some reason we didn't want to follow it on an individual basis, we wouldn't have to?
Correct. It is a guidance document.
Okay.
I think your legal counsel may want to weigh in on this.
I'll weigh in on that. It is a guidance document, as he said, but Planning Commission and Council have the obligation to consider each application on its merits as far as a rezoning or anything that may not necessarily conform to it, because not only is it a guidance document, but as time elapses, things change. So you have to take into an account that it's a historic document as well.
Okay.
So
Because we do it about,
say
it's
we get
updated about every 10 years or so.
Yeah, but that's why it's supposed to be updated on a regular basis. But say we get to 2030 and that council and that planning commission looks at the land use plan, and then they get an application for something that's not even contemplated by that map, they have to consider that application again on its merits.
Okay. And so then my last question is, so in the community planning priorities, the number one thing here is redevelopment and infill locations are favored over development of greenfield locations. And so the Glass Farm is essentially a greenfield location, even though I know it's within your service boundary. I guess, should there be more in the plan about infill, about how much could be built in with infill, what that means for the current infrastructure, and what kinds of things could promote more infill if that's the number one community planning priority?
So that priority list is a list. It is not in priority order. It is just a numbered list. But to your point, there are a number of recommendations. Like I said, I hit the high points. There are a number of recommendations that are about infill, such as putting together a booklet on how to develop accessory dwelling units, things of that nature. So I think you're doing it, and also promoting village-owned lots. So you've been doing that a lot, promoting those infill policies. I think that so that should continue.
Okay.
But outside of the Glass Farm, your infill development opportunities are pretty low.
Okay. Is that like, I mean, is there I didn't see any analysis in there of like how many, additional houses or units could be, created using infill? You're saying we're pretty dense.
You're pretty built out. There is a list that is not in the plan of currently available lots that was done a little bit ago. I did do the calculation for the area of Glass Farm, and the developable part of Glass Farm, and then the section that is just to the south of it. And that's really what you got left.
Okay.
Even with all of Antioch College's property to the west of Livermore?
So yes, there is some of that. However, I did not want to get out in front of the decision-making process of Antioch on what they were going to do. We had conversations with Antioch. They have, at the time, they were discussing west of Livermore, but no decision had ever been really made by the board, other than to explore the concept of divesting themselves of that. So I was trying not to get ahead of the larger institutions.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation, Aaron. Where'd Judy go? She's not showing up on my screen right now. Any other members of Planning Commission? Does anybody have any questions for Aaron?
I have a lot of questions, and one's about process. I mean, if we, Planning Commission, want to make suggestions, changes, are we doing it in the form of a motion?
My impression is not. Judy, do you have?
I'd ask Aaron Sorrell that question.
Okay.
You're not at the point where this is a public hearing and it's not gone to council as something that they would adopt. So my understanding is you have a conversation, maybe a vote at Planning Commission as to whether you want to suggest that change to Aaron, but that's just a perspective. I'd ask Aaron that one.
Yeah, I think what I would be looking for is what is the general consensus of the Planning Commission so that we're not changing the recommendations back and forth.
Right. And that it's ultimately Village Council that is
Correct.
Deciding to, right, yeah.
I mean, we're not, so we did a parkland ordinance and then we voted to recommend it to council. So, I mean, there are things I would like to recommend that we adjust on this plan. Like, for example, Aaron, and so down in the south, actually the property that's to be annexed, we went through a year process and it was shown on the maps as RA. And then suddenly it shows up as medium density. And part of the reason that's concerning to me is because you don't get usually you don't get comments when something is okay, like that's good, so nobody comments on it. You usually only hear comments when people want to change something. So that got changed somehow, some way in the process, and the whole thing got changed to medium density. And actually, that's not what the developer in the annexation agreement even asked for. So I would just change it back to RA, and if anything in that area is to be something else, then that would come through as a rezoning. That's just one example. Another example.
Laura, this is Denise. I just don't want the implication that he has changed this as a result of this annexation. That medium density in that south transitional area was there way before that. When things come in from annexation, they come in as RA, then they go to Planning Commission and on to council for a different rezoning designation. But I don't want to imply that Aaron caught wind of annexation and changed this because that's
No, I'm not saying Aaron.
Okay.
Aaron.
Well,
I mean,
sounded like
so
that.
I think that original low density zoning is what's currently in the township, if I recall. But this was medium density residential was my original recommendation when I put this draft together. And that was before I heard about this annexation.
So I guess what I'm asking, I would make a motion that we change it to low density residential, for example. And there are some other things in it I think we need to look at that I think are, for various reasons, things that I would like to change.
If you move to amend, you're going to have to specify the basis because this is, again, a guidance document that's had research and planning and a consultant working on it. If you're moving to amend his recommendations, you're probably going to want to justify why you're making such amendments.
And we all have reasons, but that's the political process, right?
They need to be on the record.
So I make a motion that the village's property of Glass Farm, the 25 acres, be rezoned to public use. And my reasons for that are several. It's a wetland, hydric soils, high water table. It is a green field. It is one of the most expensive parcels of land to develop because of where the utilities aren't. We've had 2 prior studies in 2010 and 2017 that recommended if any kind of development happened at all, it would be low, single family residential and very low density, and it's begin going back to the hydric soils. So I have a lot of reasons. Now that transitional, what Aaron has designated on Enon Road to the west of or east of Enon Road as light industrial transitional, that is a great place for the high density residential. So I would not change that parcel. Although I would take away the industrial designation because I agree we do need more high density and that would be a great place for it. But the actual 25 acres of village-owned land, including the entrance from Fairfield Road, is hydric soils, like right where you're going to build a roadway. So these are my reasons. And I can give other reasons. And I know we have people listening that want to talk about parking, but all those parking plans that were done, those are concepts that I don't think necessarily need to be in this. They're parking studies, okay? So it's good that we have them. Let's put them on the shelf if we ever need to use them, but I would not include them in the comprehensive land use plan.
So I have a comment about the glass farm. We all know the soil is rough. We know what the soil is. If a developer is going to come in there, they know there's already going to be an expense to do anything. So more likely than not, we're not going to find a developer's not going to come in there because he or she knows as a developer, they're going to have to spend a ton of money to do just that. And then to build makes it it's not going to be cost effective to begin with, right? I mean, we pretty much have figured that out, correct?
Right. So why lead somebody down the primrose path and go through a lot of time, effort? And the village, by the way, has already spent a lot of money on a concept plan that really is a developer function. But be that as it may, there it is. And I think we're leading. It's going to go one of 2 ways, is that the developer's going to say, well, if I develop it, you, dear village, I'll need some cost share from you on the utilities. And they're going to look to us to build utilities, which is adding cost to our budget, which I'm not in favor of. I mean, and we have plenty of green, and we should encourage infill development, of which we have a lot.
So I'd like some clarification perhaps from Judy about what our process needs to be here tonight going forward with this. Trying to see where you are here.
I think we've got Laura framing her desired changes to the comprehensive plan in the form of a motion. Brianne's asked that she justify her reason for wanting those changes to be made. Laura's done so. That motion got pretty elaborate. I would say it was a little hard to follow as a motion. So I guess what my suggestion would be is that if that's what Laura wants to do, if she could reframe a motion in one item at a time and briefly reference the justification that she's given, and then you would call a vote on each of those motions. Brianne, does that sound accurate to you?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll reframe, I'll go one at a time. So regarding the 25 acres owned by the Village of Yellow Springs that we call Glass Farm, I make a motion that we show it on the land use map as public, for now, as public use versus high density residential, based on the numerous reasons I just gave.
Public use or parks and open space?
Well, I would prefer parks and open space, but the reason I said public use is simply because it's government owned right now. And I have another motion to make regarding the Mills Lawn property that's going to go along the same lines.
Okay, Laura's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Would the clerk call the roll, or should we have discussion of the motion first? Anybody want to have anything to say about Laura's motion?
So I would like to understand more. So
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
This is Steve.
Okay.
I just, so what are the implications of taking basically that piece of the glass farm? I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is that this isn't something that we've been able to entice anybody to build on in the past, that we've tried to do this.
No, I don't think we have. I don't think we've tried to entice anyone. They've had studies about it, and the studies are driven by, as Aaron said, the simple fact we simply own it. But it's not really being driven by what it is, like what kind of soils, where it is versus the infrastructure that we have,
right,
and so forth. You know, the fundamentals are being ignored in my view, and that's why I'm making this motion.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay.
Yes.
With the clerk.
So this is just a plan, right? I mean,
Right.
I wanted to get to that point where, we're not making a determination that this is, cast in stone, that it's either a public use or it's high density. At this point, we're just framing it that we're looking at this as high density at this particular stage as a plan, and it could be changed later in the fact, just in the comprehensive land use plan. Am I right in assuming that, or do we need to craft it now? Do we have to craft it now and say, we want to make that just public use of parks and recreation? I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that, again, we're looking at a 10-year plan, or are we looking at something finite right now that we want to get to and say, boom, make it public use and leave it at that?
You don't have a zoning modification. Again, that would have to be each individual application, each individual property. This is a 10-year guidance document, essentially. And under Ohio Revised Code, municipalities don't actually have to have a comprehensive plan in order to enforce their zoning. So they are two separate things.
Does that answer your question, Dino?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Okay, would the clerk call the roll on Laura's motion?
Yes. Green,
Yes.
Pallotta,
No.
Williams,
No.
Curlis,
Yes.
Doden.
No.
The motion does not pass.
I have another motion regarding the parking plans that have been drawn up, and I would move that those be removed as part of the comprehensive land use plan. Not that we're not going to use them and that they're not valuable, but they're not part of the comprehensive land use plan.
Yeah, I'm just curious, why should they not be part of the comprehensive land use plan?
Because there's a lot of issues with them, and there's a lot more public discussion. So what'll happen is, here's what happens. You put it in the plan, then the executive branch will run with it and they'll do it. Just because we have it in a plan. That means, oh, you have it in a plan, so we get to do it. It needs a lot more development discussion, and not that every one of those have the same issues, but certainly as we've had people show up, the angled parking on Elm and Phillips certainly has a lot more issues than, say, the plan regarding around the Bryan Center and Railroad Street. And I believe Carol and Mr. Slaughter are correct. And we had one of the busiest days I've ever seen in Yellow Springs on last Saturday. And I drove all around to find parking. You know where I finally found it? In front of Mr. Slaughter's house and there was like nobody on Elm and over on Phillips. And it was so busy that day. So I'm just saying, I think that's true. It's like a problem that we're trying to, it's not a problem. Now, people perceive that parking in downtown's a problem, and that's a well-known fact. every downtown has the same issue, is that it seems like you don't have enough parking if you can't park within 1 block of where you want to go. That's just human nature. So in any event, they're valuable, they can be useful, but I wouldn't put them in a comprehensive land use plan.
But isn't that going to be part of our issue as we keep on growing 10 years from now, or 5, 6, 7 years from now, that's going, parking's, as we keep on growing or businesses come, isn't that going to be an issue for us that we should partake in that or put that as something in the plan?
Well, then if we decide we want to extend parking on Elm Street, well, council will have a meeting about it and we'll pull out that plan and somebody else will present another plan. I mean, I don't think those kind of very specific plans go in the comprehensive land use plan.
And Aaron, going back to your presentation, when you were talking about the parking on Elm Street and Phillip Street, was that in the draft of the comprehensive land use plan? Was that in the context of if something changes with the status of what is currently Mills Lawn School? That these are considerations that, or parking consideration?
Yeah, so we looked at opportunities that were in and around downtown to help alleviate, and where could we find more efficiencies. I would not anticipate that angled parking would get built until either Mills Lawn transitions from being an elementary school, or secondly, to do that would the way that the vision or that we sketched it out would require a rebuild of the southern side of Elm Street. So it would be done in a larger reconstruction of Elm Street with, again, new paving, curbs, sewer, et cetera. So it's not just a matter of, I would suggest it's not just a matter of throwing down some new striping and calling it a day. To do it right is going to take some investment. And whether or not that is now or in 5 or so years, or when you can get grant money or when there's a need for it, this was the idea to illustrate that this is a potential solve. Now, I would argue that you need to redo Elm Street regardless. You're half parking on, half gravel, half asphalt. So whether it's parallel or angled parking, that part of Elm Street needs some TLC.
I'd just like to comment as staff that parking, however it's perceived, has been an ongoing dialogue for many, many, many years. And there have actually been surveys done downtown. There's been parking studies from 20 years ago. I mean, it just continues to come up. And I think the last possibility with us at the staff level was a paving over of Beatty Hughes. And then, and of course, that, drew a lot of negative responses. And so having council backed off of that idea, as did staff. And I think this was an opportunity to try to find a way to alleviate that parking, however you want to perceive it, in close to the downtown area without creating new parking lots. And I do appreciate that, you did put that in there.
So one thing people need to remember that, yes, these studies are done and people make these comments, but in the last, 3 years, 4 years, we have added parking spaces on the Bryan Center property where that one basketball court was. We purchased and improved greatly the parking known as the Railroad Street parking lot. So those were 2 big parking project improvements. And then a third thing, and superintendent of schools said nobody's ever asked them if a deal could be done so that the Mills Lawn parking lot in the rear could be used, especially on weekends. I mean, there's a deal that could be done that would make it unnecessary to add any kind of street improvements.
Okay. Anybody else? So did we get a second on
No,
the
you did
motion
not.
that Laura made?
You have not.
Okay. Could you repeat her motion back?
The motion is to remove the parking plans from the comprehensive land use plan.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion of the motion? Okay, would the clerk call the roll, please?
Pallotta,
You're muted.
No.
Williams,
No.
Curlis,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Doden.
No.
Okay, the motion does not pass.
Okay, I have another motion. Again, this is a 10 to 20 year plan. We need more downtown business space. So the footprint of Mills Lawn School is the perfect place to do that expansion, including any additional off-street parking. So again, this is not saying anything about now, 5 years. This may be 10, 20 years from now, but the footprint of Mills Lawn School on Walnut, so what? I don't know, an acre and whatever that. I'm not talking about all that green space, not talking about that at all. As a matter of fact, I would make sure, I think you've got that whole block showing blue. I would show the western, at least the western 2/3 of that block as open space, public recreation open space. So I'd make it green, but the eastern third, where more or less the footprint of Mills Lawn School would be shown as future downtown business and office. One thing we don't have is designated office zoning in the downtown.
You have to take into account that is a current public use. And if you change it
Right.
now, then you're going to run into some problems because you cannot forecast when it may be available.
But this is about the future. If they can use it for the next 50 years as public use, but if the use changes, right, that's what comprehensive land use plans are about, is if it changes, this is what the community sees as what should go there.
The comprehensive plan, it takes into account what is there right now and what may develop in the future.
Well, thank you. So that's what I'm suggesting, is that the eastern 1/3 be added to the downtown commercial district.
Aaron, did you want to comment on that? Because I know you talked with the school district. You had several meetings.
Yeah, so we had a couple meetings with the school district about that parcel. Well, really that and the high school, but more about this one in particular. And so one of the reasons that I didn't do a lot with this was there was still some heartburn about past levy failure and also concern about moving forward if there is another levy attempt or discussions that were ongoing about a consolidated campus, that those were so up in the air that there was a lot of unknowns. And at the time, the school board representatives that weren't excited about us making a lot of determinations or future determinations for that property. I think maybe that's lessened as the consolidation campus discussion is moving more forward than it was originally. And maybe this is a happy middle ground. Laura, one of the things that we could do is we could put a paragraph or two or a section about potential reuse of Mills Lawn without actually changing the future land use map. and talk about what it could be and potential uses along with some of the sketches that we've done rather than changing the future land use map at this point in time. But that's really your call.
Would that address your concerns, Laura?
I think I'd prefer to see like, you can have a paragraph, but then have like an overlay exhibit, like in the appendix, say, you know, here would be an example if that was, that kind of zoning was overlaid over the current use. We do that a lot. You know, this map is full of stuff that
we can't see your map because
I know,
of your
but the
background.
the map is full of parcels that currently are zoned like A or RA, and we show them as future RB or RC, you know? So I don't see any problem with showing it as future downtown because it doesn't change. If the use doesn't change, it'll be there forever.
So Aaron, do your future maps for Mills Lawn, I mean, what do they show for basically the green space part of it? Does it show it being developed or does it show it staying green?
No, so what we did is we just took some examples of sort of traditional downtown developments that could be built on the eastern edge of this site. We don't touch or even show any perspective the back green space behind the parking lot. I think that there was general consensus that we heard that existing playground open space area should be left alone. But the footprint of Mills Lawn from Limestone going all the way up to Elm Street is nearly 6 acres. So that's a lot of acreage to play with for development in the future.
Okay. So now, Laura, did you actually have a motion?
Well, like I said, I don't think it's affecting at all the school's decision to show that if we made part of that, the eastern third of that square made it downtown business.
What I was trying to get at is there a motion on the table? No.
I'll make that motion.
And what?
Excuse me, and along with that the western 2/3 is shown as green space.
Let's call a vote on the motion. Would the clerk call the roll? I'm sorry, it needs to be second. I'm sorry, pardon me?
I was just saying you needed a second. I'm sorry.
Right. I'm sorry. Yep. Just getting ahead of myself. Is there a second?
I'll second Laura's motion.
Okay. Could the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes. Williams.
No.
Pallotta.
No.
Curlis.
Yes.
Green.
No.
Doden.
No.
Motion does not pass.
Thank you. That's all the good ideas I have for tonight.
All right. So, correct me, Judy. I'm trying to see you. There you are. Just helps me if I can see a face. So I had to scroll over to you. Is our next step then with this to decide tonight whether we want to pass this on to Village Council?
That's what I would recommend. I leave it to Denise and to Aaron, but that was what was planned for tonight.
Okay, and procedurally, do we also need to have a public hearing on this?
You do not.
Okay.
My understanding is you do not. Brianne, can you check me?
Because okay, Brianne?
If I can get myself off mute. Yes, Judy's correct. We're talking about something that's had significant public input already. And when council gets it, they will have a public hearing on it as well. But again, it is a guidance document. It is general in nature. It is an umbrella for future zoning decisions that will come to Planning Commission and Council.
Okay, thank you.
The way I understand it is that it's a recommendation to either adopt or to not adopt. what Aaron is proposing to move it to council.
Okay. All right. Is there any other questions or concerns by any members of the Planning Commission?
I do have one
Right.
more, Frank. But isn't it true?
Okay.
Isn't it true, Denise, though? Because here's how it works, right? That when a developer brings a plan for a parcel and wants rezoning, if the comprehensive land use plan says, well, we want it's medium density there, then if they want something other than that, you will go back and rely on the plan for, the plan will be used to justify staff decisions and other decisions, right?
Yeah, I use the comprehensive land use plan and the visioning plan when people do bring an application for particular use. That is correct.
So one of the dangers in zoning the 30 acres to the south medium density is if we actually want some single family density, you've zoned it all medium density, and therefore
this is not zoning. This is
I know, but
land use. So when the annexation comes in, it comes in as RA. The developer could end up saying, "I want to do a PUD. I'm going to ask to rezone to RA or keep it RA, or I want to rezone it to RB." I don't. It's up to what the developer wants to do.
Yeah, and as long as the council and planning commission say we did consider the comprehensive plan and we considered the request for rezoning, and the proposed use or proposed rezoning is not incompatible with the general nature of the comprehensive plan, which again, that is not saying that's what the zoning is going to be forever. We're just looking at this as a generality, then it'll be upheld by the courts if it goes to litigation.
All right. Any other questions or concerns? Huh? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and your understanding. I will make a motion to recommend that the Village Council adopt the comprehensive land use plan.
I'll second it.
That was Pilata. Thank you.
Would the clerk call the roll, please? Judy,
Sorry,
you there?
Curlis.
Yep.
yes.
I'm sorry. Williams,
Yes.
Pilata,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And when will that then be going for to Village Council then?
We will have
Presentation.
come back and make, sorry, having a little brain lapse there. Aaron will come back and make a presentation on the 21st. But it would not go into ordinance form until the first meeting in October 3rd, and then the public hearing for the second reading would be October 19th, I believe. Is that correct? October
5th and 19th, yes.
October 5th and 19th, yes.
Wait, Denise, say that one more time for my calendar.
Okay, so sorry. So Monday, the 21st, you'll make your presentation.
Yep.
And then October 5th and October 19th are the first and second readings.
Okay.
By council, yeah.
All right. Again, thank you, everybody, Planning Commission members, but also members of the public and the staff. That's complicated stuff to get through, and it's even harder to do virtually as opposed to face-to-face. But thank you for your forbearance and diligence. The next item on the agenda is the presentation by Josue, is that right, about what the process is for annexation?
Yes, Frank, I have two updates. One is on the ATP and one is on the proposed annexation. And before I go forward, I see a hand from AJ Williams. And Frank, how much time do I have?
Well, I would just, considering the hour, I would urge you to be as brief as possible. AJ, did you have something?
I just wanted to thank Aaron for the hard work on the plan if he's still on. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
And Josue and Frank, if I could just make a suggestion so that we know where we are going forward. Do you want to ask Johnny if he wants to push off the stormwater study for another meeting, or if he wants to forge ahead for tonight, just in terms of planning your time here?
Yeah, I would be. Yeah, is Johnny is still there? What do you think?
I'm here.
Would you like to? You ready to push through?
No, I can push it off till next time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. That'd probably be best for everybody. Thank you very much.
All right, so I'll take it over from here. I have a brief presentation to show you. I think the visuals are good and important. I will, for the sake of time, I will try to get through this as fast as possible. If you have questions, please jump in. So to start off, I have an update on the active transportation plan. You received letters regarding the active transportation plan, and you might have seen letters also in the newspaper regarding the active transportation plan. So I thought it would be fair and useful for Planning Commission to hear from the administration on what is in the works. So here's the agenda of my presentation. I want to talk about the active transportation award. We received $1.6 million award for active transportation initiatives. Initially, this grant award was for 1.6. Since the initial award announcement, we've been appointed an engineering firm, and that engineering firm has done cost estimates and has requested an amendment to our award, and that led to the increase of the award amount by $114,000 for a total of 1.7 million. So what is that 1.7 million used for? Here's the estimated timeline and project phase for the amounts. We've got preliminary engineering happening in 2021, detailed designs in 2022, and right-of-way and construction happening in 2023. I'll remind you that this is a zero match local fund. That means we don't have to put any money onto this project. This is all being funded by the Ohio Department of Transportation. Brief overview of what we applied for. We're looking to improve pedestrian and bike-friendly goals in the community, be accessible to senior citizens, disabled, and students. This is in line with the complete streets policies that we have adopted and the active transportation plan that's been adopted. For us as the administration, it's important to have plans because this gives us a rough roadmap of what goals we want to accomplish as a community, and they're also instrumental in our efforts of securing grant funding. As an example, this $1.7 million that we have been awarded by ODOT with zero match requirements from the village. All right, the recommendations from the active transportation plan included 11 improvements in total, 5 locations that are priority 1 recommendations, 3 locations that are priority 3. The approach and that the team here and our consultants took to secure this funding was making improvements along primary routes in the village, improving the Little Miami Scenic Trail crossings, and looking at Corey Street connections to the Little Miami on Corey Street, Little Miami Scenic Trail. All right, so what were the countermeasures included in this active transportation plan? That's the reconstruction of the multi-use path along Dayton Street from Enon Road to Elm Street, curb extensions, high visibility crosswalk marking signs at 5 intersections at Dayton Street and Xenia, improve Little Miami scenic trail crossings with 2 RRFBs. RRFBs are these rapid flashing lights. We have installed one at Xenia and Short Street. They improve visibility and crossing for pedestrians at those intersections. A redesign of curve and reduce crossing distances at Xenia Avenue, Corey Street intersection. There's a signal there. Provide sidewalk trail connectivity to the Little Miami Scenic Trail from East Limestone Street and Glen Street, including RRFBs and crosswalks on Corey Street. All right, so this is a brief overview of what that project entails. The stars on the map there, those are the areas that are looking to be improved. And the yellow line, that's the reconstruction of that Dayton Share Bike Road. Any questions? All right, moving on to the next project. This is the proposed annexation of approximately 33 acres. This one, I will solicit the help of our solicitor, Brianne Parcel, and I'll ask her to jump in on a couple points here. But overall, I wanted you to know where we are on this proposed annexation, the overview, the process, and what potential future developments could go on there. Just for sake of clarity, we're talking about this parcel right here on the south side of town. This is the parcel that's right currently in the township, and where the buyer and developer is looking to petition the village and the Greene County for annexation into the village. Any questions on the parcel?
How deep's the sewer line on that property?
Laura, I have to get back to you on that. You and I did speak this afternoon, and I will follow up with Johnny and the team. But certainly from a utilities perspective, Johnny, he's online, and Johnny has a very clear position on water and sewer service here. Johnny, you want to jump in briefly on that?
If I'm not mistaken, that sewer is about 14 feet deep, and it is gravity fed straight to the plant.
And Johnny, is there what's the best location if we were to engage in such a significant development and near our service boundaries?
This one here is probably the best at this time because it already has the sewer and the water. Splant has our main water line going down it, and there is sewer capacity that flows gravity to the plant instead of taking it to the lift station and then pumping back to the plant.
In the lift station that Johnny referenced, that lift station processes about 70% of the volume of biosolids. So again, I want to reiterate the point that Johnny made, that if there is the most suitable location to engage in development, it is right here. So this would expand our utility customer base, spreading the cost burden of our utility infrastructure across a larger customer base.
Josue, do you know if when this is developed, the lots that have been platted out just to the north of it is also going to be developed?
This right here?
I know those are there, but there's nothing built there.
Correct. This has been replatted here, and the plan, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, since Planning Commission will see the development, will see we'll have an opportunity and weigh on it, and more importantly, Planning Commission is the one who would approve anything that will go on property that would be annexed into the village. But to your point, to your question, Stephen, there is a proposed development on the village side of the parcels that are up for sale as part of the deal that's being made by the owner and the developer. So that includes the area that is replatted up here on what's listed here as Morgan Hill, the cul-de-sac here, and this area to the left of it that is titled Lot 13. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And just to clarify a point that a lot of people have asked me about, if you look at the yellow line on that map, people were asking about our Planning Commission share. His deed gives him to the center line of Spillane Road, but that's not in the village. The Greene County GIS is wrong because the annexation will need to include the entirety of Spillane Road, which technically Mr. Doden owns right of way for. So That's why his name is also going to have to be on this project. But that's
Correct.
the only reason is for that right of way.
Thank you, Brianne, for clarifying that. We have received questions. Why are we annexing two properties? Obviously, the lot on the yellow line shown here in the graph is already in the village, but there are some discrepancies in the records. This would allow us to clean that discrepancy as well. Okay, any questions on the parcel? All right, excellent. We'll go into process, and this is where Brianne's expertise on here. This is the workflow on a type 1 annexation that the petitioners have proposed to annex under. Currently, what has been brought before council is a resolution to extend services to that township parcel. That is the first step in the process. It also includes an annexation agreement that has been shared with council and is currently being worked on between the village representative or solicitor, Brianne Parcel, and the township's representative. So that's the beginning, that's the start of the process. Once that has been agreed upon, it goes, the petitioner files the petition with the clerk of the Board of County Commissioners. It includes the annexation agreement. They vote on it. If that is successful, it comes back to the municipality for it to be accepted or rejected. That is another point in which the public has input on this annexation, and then if it's successful, it moves towards annexation, and then the process of development on that parcel begins, and that's something that Planning Commission will be deeply involved with. As it currently stands, there is a potential for a rezoning of the property. And the developer has made clear their intentions of not only what they're looking to do, but also how collaborative they are in the process and in assisting the village reach housing goals and other things that we requested considerations, whether they are sidewalks, space on the roads for snow plowing, and other things that we need or we think that are instrumental in the success of a healthy living community in that area. Brianne, did I miss anything?
I think you summed it up nicely in terms of the timetable. Again, the clock starts ticking when we get the agreement finalized with the township, because that is what is required for the petitioner to submit a type 1 petition, is for us to have an agreement with the township.
Mm-hmm. And I want to provide a clarifying point that there is an intent to develop this property in the future. It is to our advantage for various reasons to annex the property. There's a utility service that we would already be providing. Anyway, there's benefits of expanding the tax base for the village, and that's done through the annexation.
And Josue or Brianne, can you talk just briefly about what it is zoned at in the township? It's I think there's some confusion in the community that it's agricultural only, but it's
yes.
Yeah, if you can explain.
Thank you, Denise. There's perception that this property is zoned agricultural and that's the only use for the property, and it is not correct. This is zoned agricultural residential, so there is a right to build here by the developer. There will be 10,000 square foot lots that could be developed under its current zoning designation. Brianne, did I miss anything there?
No, and I would just say that some municipalities, when they annex property, it keeps the township zoning. In Yellow Springs, everything that's annexed initially gets an RA designation, and then it has to be rezoned from that RA designation, or a process. If the developer wants to keep the RA designation, they give us a communication saying that they're fine with the RA designation, but we do anticipate that we'll have a request to rezone this property.
Mm-hmm. All right. Frank, I kept it under 15 minutes. I'm at 12 minutes and a half, and so I'm going to squeeze in one more thing and item onto here. You're going to see in the council agenda a consideration for a transfer of an easement. I also want you to know that because we have a petition from a landowner that we the village have an easement on, and we are working with them and Tecumseh Land Trust to consider a transfer of the easement on that property. We're hoping that nothing changes in the overall structure of the easement, but that's something that you may see on the council agenda, and I want you to be aware of. Brianne, did I miss anything on that?
I don't think so.
All right, that's my 13 minutes, Frank.
What's the property, or is that?
The Johnson Farm on Hyde Road.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Josue? Good. Thank you very much. Okay. That's helpful to hear the clarification of the process on it. So, all right, since we're going to delay the stormwater study reports, thank you for your patience, Johnny, if you're still out there, and thank you for being willing to come in, probably, I guess, at our next meeting. We didn't have anything under new business. Under agenda planning, we had a possibility of discussing parking minimums.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to discuss, Planning Commission. You know, as I think was pretty evident at the last conditional use hearing, how unrealistic they are. And so I did like what Aaron actually said about not changing it, even if the use changes, especially in the downtown area, not going higher than what was already available. Or, I mean, it's just a conversation we need to have. The other thing that's coming up is a conditional use hearing that is going to be the Yellow Springs Brewery wants to put an outdoor patio. As you recall, a couple years ago, they came forward with a plan for the 1475 Xenia Avenue property. They had an outdoor patio on the side lot. Then they had one upper deck. Then they came back again because the conditional use was expiring. They eliminated both of those patios. Well, now they've finished the remodeling of the interior, getting close to an opening date, and they want to bring back the outdoor patio. The issue now for them is that this outdoor patio would be in the front, that there is a setback issue, but it can come to Planning Commission first. And, you know, you can, either way, it's going to have to go to BZA as well, but they want to come to Planning Commission first to see if you are okay with the concept. And finally, the other thing that's going to be coming on the agenda, it will be on the consent agenda only. If you do not take any action on it, it will be considered approved. And that is for there was a survey presented by LJB for taking off about 90-foot frontage on the southern end of the Yellow Springs High School property. I believe that's for the trail to Agraria. And it's totals about 2.74 acres. It's a minor subdivision, but our requirements do state that it has to at least go on the consent agenda of Planning Commission. And that's all we have right now.
Okay. All right. That gets us to the last item on the agenda, which would be adjournment, unless anybody else has anything.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, Judy, could you call the roll, please, so we get it on record?
Williams.
Yes.
Bellata.
Yes.
Corliss.
No, yes.
Oh, jeez. You got me, man. Green.
Yes.
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, again, thanks everybody for your patience and hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Good night.
Yep.